I do just want to say, though, that I understand Supervisor Howard's questioning is that this has all gone over with the budget team prior to. However, you know, we need to know this information too. We're going to be the ones providing or making the approval of the budget. So I do appreciate everybody taking the time to make sure that we understand it. I understand that for some it might be a waste of time, but it is certainly important for us to be transparent, for me, for the public.
And again, as you stated last time, the process is transparent. So I want you to recall that statement that you made, that our current process before we had these hearings was a transparent process.
It is 2:00. We are going to be moving forward with the Community Development Department, and I recognize Heidi Kunstel, Director.
Good afternoon. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have regarding our general fund budgets.
Okay.
How would you prefer to do this, Heidi? Would you like to go department by department? Because I just want to point out that you operate 6 departments underneath your department, if not more, if we count the non-general fund of roads.
Yeah.
So how would you like to do it? Would you like us
I
just
think we could begin with 101, 183, engineering, and then just go through them.
Perfect.
That's an easy one.
So if I could kick us off, Chair.
Go right ahead.
Because my concern with engineering is it doesn't have any payroll or salaries. So can you explain that structure of the engineering department as to why there are no, how does that work?
In 2018, there was a reorganization, and the engineering and surveying division staff were transferred to the road fund. And that has worked well for our department. So the payroll associated with those employees is in the 102,311. The process has been reviewed annually since that's happened by the State Controller's Office as part of the annual road audit. So they're housed within the other budget unit. This is just an operating budget for non-road fund-related duties or duties that can't be reimbursed through the county service area number 1 or flood control.
Okay, so with that though, how, if the engineering department did perform those activities in other departments, where does that funding, where's the payroll for that? Is it all just under roads no matter what, even if they did something for?
So what you're saying, okay, so for example, if the roads division staff perform services for the county service area, there's an interfund line item in the 307,077, which is the CSA budget, and in the 102,311, which would be the road fund budget. So what we have, for example, in this budget is an interfund line item, which is what transfers, which I believe is for $240,000, which is what is used to transfer funds to the road fund to make it whole for any non-road fund cost.
Okay, and so there's also no revenues in the engineering department. Is there any chance for us to have revenue sources in engineering?
The revenues that the engineering division receive, or that engineering functions receive, are deposited into the road fund,
Okay.
and they're used to help offset this $240,000. So if we receive $10,000 in revenue for that month and the costs that are spent are $20,000, then we're only going to ask for $10,000 to be transferred.
Okay. And then my last question that I have is, do you have any identified goals for the engineering department in this next fiscal year?
Yeah, to maintain our current staffing levels, which of course are over in the roads, to recruit for a new engineering technician. We've had a very long-standing employee who's going to be retiring at the end of the month, so we're hoping to refill his position. Other goals roles are just to, ensure that we are, reviewing and issuing permits that are relative to this particular fund in a timely manner, such as grading permits, improvement plans, survey maps, et cetera.
Great, thank you. That's all the
You're
questions I
welcome.
have for engineering. Anyone else? What would you like to do next, Heidi?
We could just go through the line planning. 101-258.
Okay. Anybody have questions or?
Yeah, I just had the one question about professional services. Seeing that it is 164,000 this year when we were only 45,000 last year, I was just kind of wondering what the plan was.
Yeah, Supervisor Starkey had the same question, or similar question. Of that amount, 159,595 is allocated to the Camp Memorial Expansion Feasibility Study from the State Coastal Conservancy. And so we recently received an augmentation in funds from the State Conservancy in June. So the majority of the funds are for that. We also have $5,000 in that line item in the event that we need to hire a professional planning consultant to provide outside services to our department. So that's what it is. There is also a corresponding revenue line item to be reimbursed for that 159,000. Yeah, or $595. That would be 90622. So it's essentially a wash.
Okay, thank you. I
You're
missed that.
welcome.
I'm curious, we have 3 brand-new planning commissioners, and I noticed that there is a line item for just $4,000 for planning commission travel and training. Is there any wiggle room that we could get that up and increased to, because there are 3 brand-new planning commissioners?
Well, that's certainly the discretion of the board if they choose to do so. This is the first time we've, in probably, well, as long as I've been involved in budgets for the department, had any money for this. But we do have 3 really new planning commissioners who are interested in bettering their knowledge. And so it is important that we can invest in them if we can. They have been provided links to some free training via the Institute of Local Government. And I think several of them are going to have, well, I think all of them have taken us up on it or will be taking us up on it. I know at least one of the commissioners would like additional training. So we've explored a couple of options. One was kind of determined to be maybe not so great. And then the second is a Planning Commissioners Academy, and that's with the California League of Cities. And Supervisor Starkey did some research on that as far as finding out what the fees would be for next fiscal year to attend the 3-day academy. So we have that information and priced that out with lodging, kind of like a high to low, staying in a nice hotel. So I
Right.
kind of went anywhere from, if they stayed in a different hotel to that hotel, it would be between $2,900 and $3,400 to attend. It's likely this particular year we may only have one commissioner who's interested in attending. And then the remaining funds would be for supplemental training. I know we've already spent some funds for Brown Act training that the county counsel's office has assisted us with. There may be some others. I mean, as far as providing law offices that provide webinar or web-based training. So it depends on whether or not the board wants to allocate for more than one commissioner to attend. And I have looked at the variety. I spent quite a bit of time this weekend looking at different options, and there really aren't that many options for planning commissioner training that aren't just either what ILG is offered or what is being offered through the League of Cities, which I think, looking at their agenda, it's really good. I mean, I'd actually like my planning staff to be able to attend it as well. It'd be very valuable. Unfortunately, the training budget for planning isn't very much. But I think, as most of you know, in the past, our budgets have focused primarily on providing money for positions that had registration or required continuing education. And because planning doesn't have that, we typically haven't had very much allocated to it.
as somebody that's served on the planning commission for 8 years, it was always a process to gain as much knowledge as we could from staff. There's only so much room we have under our county policies and more importantly, under statute to have flexibility as planning commissioners. So you get caught up to speed pretty quick within a year. And what you don't know, staff is there to help coach you through a process, through discussion that is transparent in front of the folks that are proposing an application to be approved by the commission and staff input. So not too dissimilar from the processes that we go by. We don't have to know everything. To me, it's not necessarily a priority, especially for those commissioners that are serving a long time.
And how many employees are on the payroll in planning? Do we have 2 planners and a part-time person?
Well, we have we have 2 planners, and we have a secretary who is assigned 50% to the planning division and 50% to our code enforcement division.
And then general workload for the planners, how many cases are they taking in every, will you walk me through that little bit of process?
It's very, it varies significantly. Sometimes we give out lots of applications, run people through the process. Sometimes we see them return, sometimes we don't. Sometimes what they come back with isn't really necessarily what we wanted, or, the adequately enough to be able to process the application. So any given month could be really different. And then once we receive a project, depending on whether or not it's exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, we have a whole second process that goes on with having to do AB tribal consultation, and then preparation of the initial study to the state clearinghouse, the 30-day comment period for that, and then working with a really difficult schedule of the triplicate with their publication deadlines, and then it's really prolonged the length of being able to get development applications to our commission by doing with all these deadlines that we have. Kind of doing this in a roundabout way. So I don't know if that's answered your question. All I know is you could have, we could receive 3 applications for overhead accessory buildings, super easy. Boundary adjustment, super easy. We could, on the same thing, get a subdivision that has a lot of resource issues, a coastal development permit that might have a rare plant. It just really varies, and that's just one thing that planners are doing. They're constantly receiving phone calls from members of the public, from realtors, et cetera, developers, trying to gather information or determine whether or not their property is developable, or what they can or can't do with it.
So they don't carry it like a caseload, like code enforcement carries a caseload. So
No.
they don't.
No.
But so what metrics are you using? And that's one of my questions.
And I've struggled with that. To me, the metric, or what I look at, is if people are not able to respond to people in a timely manner, and we're not able to meet the deadlines that we have to process applications, we need more staff.
Right.
And I think we realized that having one planner was not viable. When we had one planner from when Assistant CAO Hooper left our office until then we had, after he left, then we had Taylor Carsley. And then when Taylor left, we had no one. And essentially I had to go back and do it. And it was very apparent. I can understand maybe why Taylor left, even though I know really why he left, but that would certainly have been another good reason. But I've been very thankful to the board, because you did authorize the creation of that second position using the Measure R funds, and very, very thankful.
And so that has been helpful.
Oh, absolutely.
Are we pushed to the limit again, or are we
No,
feeling?
I think we're okay. I think right now what we have are 2 newer planners. They're doing great. In the longer they're here, the more the better, not better, but the more experience they're going to have, which will allow them to get through things quicker, because the institutional knowledge that you have in planning it's enormous in being able to move through your work.
Right.
And so we're just growing on that.
And then this is kind of an odd question, because sometimes we have to track our service delivery, right? Client satisfaction is how many complaints we don't get, right? So do you feel that overall the client satisfaction with the planning since we've increased it to 2? Have we, helped people proceed faster? That's a tough one, huh?
It is a tough one. I mean, I believe that we have to have been able to make things go smoother. Whether or not they're any happier with the information they receive.
Right.
Probably not. But I mean, they may receive it quicker. Sometimes it's just, this particular division is tasked with sometimes giving sort of difficult information to the public.
So planning is where people come in to do, if they want an ADU, right? They start with planning. Do we have any, do you have any goals for this next year, this fiscal year? I know you and I've talked about perhaps set plans for ADUs. Do we have any of those that you may need more on your budget in order to get those things available?
Actually, thank you for bringing that up. That would be part of our building inspection budget, and we have an employee who is off for a couple of weeks, and then he'll be returning for some light duty, and he's going to be putting together plans
Oh,
for our
nice.
building inspection. So we should have, we're going to work with county counsel's office to make sure that we're, legally on the up and up. We know other jurisdictions do it, so I think we're fine. But we're looking at sort of having a smaller unit, a mid-size unit, and then like the full-size unit that we would have 3 sets of pre-planned check plans available to the public.
And then in your revenues, you've got this Title III for the planning. It's 20,000 consistently. What is that related to?
Okay, I have to refer to my notes here. Public Law 106-395 Title III funds are available to the county for county planning. So we have a fund that has money in this that it's sort of tied in with the timber receipts and all of that. So county planning in this context is specifically for the analysis of impacts in and around the federal lands of the county. A significant amount of staff time is dedicated to this effort, as well as other planning efforts that correlate with wildfire protection, resource protection that affect the forest. And so by having this allocation, we had to submit an application in order to receive these funds, which was posted in the newspaper and then ultimately approved by your board. For a few years, we had a $15,000 allocation, and then it was increased to $20,000 in, I believe, fiscal year 22-23, in order to offset kind of rising staff costs and the fact that we then now had 2 planners.
All right. And is there any software or anything like that that your department in planning is looking at that would help streamline some of the services?
Not that I'm aware of. In this last, for fiscal year 23 and now for 24-25, funds have been allocated for, it's a natural diversity database from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife that allows us to look at an area on a map and then identify what type of, rare, threatened, endangered species may be in that area. So it's kind of an absence, presence kind of thing that helps us in our review of development applications. So that's a new thing for us, which we do appreciate having that available.
Those are all my questions for planning.
Any other questions?
I just had a clarification question talking about planners and the training aspect. I was a city planning commissioner before being on the city council. So did I misunderstand you, Supervisor Howard? You're not in favor of the training?
That's correct.
That is correct?
Yep.
Okay, because I know as a city planning commissioner, I was lost when I first got there. So I was thinking that the training would be valuable, and especially since Director Kunstler said that for planners would be, it would be valuable for planners too. I just kind of wondered why the ask for that training budget line wasn't made, or was it made?
In the planners training?
Yes.
Just because we haven't traditionally asked for it. And there is a lot of online training available. That is food for thought, but I mean, if we're looking at places to save money, which oftentimes we are when we're reviewing general fund budgets, that would certainly be one of the spots. I mean, the planners are pretty savvy at finding the training. I mean, obviously much more savvier than a commissioner may be. We're pretty much in tune with what resources are available to us, and we have networks of people that we can also interact with.
Supervisor Short, I guess I would suggest, and I'm not trying to break tradition, what I'm trying to do is save costs and a budgetary process. And from my experience, having gone through this for an 8-year period, when I didn't know something or I needed to catch up to speed, we had staff available to help coach that process. It obviously takes staff time, but it wasn't a cost that I had to go out and learn somewhere else. The resources readily available to us.
Gotcha. Thank you.
My little bit of concern is that in the past too, you had other commissioners that could, had that experience that could walk you through. And with having 3 brand new commissioners, I just wanted to make sure that we provided them the best foundation possible. But
Let's move on to community development.
Right,
Does
I'm ready.
anybody have any questions for the community development budget?
I do. So CDD, so this is where I get kind of confused here. So CDD's budget in this payroll, how many people are included in that payroll?
Okay, I can do that. The questions that you have, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
I'd like to answer those out of order.
Sure.
Because I think that would be
You
helpful.
do whatever you want. That's fine with me.
Within the CDD admin, it's myself and an account clerk. Actually, it will be an administrative assistant. In last year's budget, your board approved a reclassification of our account clerk position to an administrative assistant. The account clerk position, that position was not vacated until May of this year, so we've been recruiting since, but we have not been able to fill it. So we have I don't want to say, she's not a retired annuitant, but we have a part-time temporary employee who's helping us as an account clerk until we have this position refilled. Well, actually, until about the first week in September, and then I'll be doing it. So hopefully we get it refilled soon. But the administrative assistant, it will be paid for 50% using the CDD admin allocation, 25% with environmental health, and then, 75% with the CDD admin allocation, and then 25% with environmental health, as opposed to the current, or what the account clerk, which is 100% following the CDD admin allocation, which I can explain. And essentially what that's doing is it taking the cost of all the payroll and benefits, services and supplies, cost plan, all of those costs associated with running administratively the division, and then allocating it amongst the other 5 divisions based on payroll. So obviously the division that has the largest payroll pays the largest contribution. So what you'll see in this particular budget are 4 intra-fund line items for code enforcement, planning, building inspection, and environmental health, and then 1 inter-fund line item that's under revenues, that's the road fund coming into it. So the net cost for this division is 0 because it's balanced out with the contributions from the other divisions.
That was clear. Thank you. So under services and supplies for rental equipment, I guess I was just curious for what that rental equipment is.
Yeah, that's the photocopier for our Flint office, and so all the divisions use that, and then we charge them for copies. The invoices and processing of all of that go through our information technology department.
Oh, great. Okay, so that is like for the big blueprints and that sort of thing?
No, this is actually just for a traditional photocopier. It's like to Canon, or
Oh.
who the bills are to. We have 2 bills each month. I think one's just based on having the equipment, and the others for the number of copies that run through it.
Under revenues for inter-fund roads, what is, no, hold on. Sorry, other charges, contribution to outside agency under 30530. What is that?
That would be if the department wanted to participate in the E3 Summer Youth Program.
Oh, okay.
We did that in fiscal years 21-22 and 21-22 and 22-23, and we had intended to do it this year, but with losing our account clerk who had provided the supervision for that, we weren't able to participate this year, but we're hoping we'll be fully staffed by the May of 2025, which is when they reach out to us participating in the program.
Okay. So when we have the revenues that come in, that the 290,000 from the interfund from roads, because it's coming from a non-general fund, what reporting requirements are mandated on the state level? Like, what my question is that when that money's transferred into a general fund department, do you have the same reporting requirements to the state, or is that just enough for them to say we've transferred this over for this purpose?
I believe all the monitoring or auditing, it would occur on the road fund side. So in the 102-311 budget, it would be like any other transfer, any other thing that they would pay for as far as being audited. That would be my understanding. Auditor Shad wanted to add to that.
No. Okay. And then, do you have any major challenges or risks that are facing this department's budget in the next few years?
Not particularly. I think my largest concern is being able to refill that position because, being able to pay your bills and do all those things, which is what this one position does for all of our general fund divisions, it's pretty vital. And while I've now been trained to do it, I don't have time to do that in my own job. I mean, I do, but it's extra time.
So the
have to stay
administrative
later, come
assistant,
in
is that what
earlier.
you're talking about, getting that administrative assistant
That's
up and
correct.
going?
Yeah, they would perform all of the duties that our account clerk has done traditionally, and then we've also identified a series of other kind of higher level type duties that we would like to add in to it, which is going to be a great thing if we find the
So I
person
would
for
imagine
it.
that's your goal for this next year for this.
It's my goal for the next 3 weeks. I'd like it to happen.
And one of the things that we've had recent discussions on is the fact that with the new system that's going in, that it allows the individual departments to do far more of the actual billing and processing of those bills before it impacts the auditor's office individually. And so as that comes to bear, we may have to look at reexamining some of the department auditing individually, how much that is being done in-house and how much is being impacted back to at the auditor's office. And as this new system rolls out, that's one of the questions that we have to ask and look at.
Sure.
That's all I had.
Is that it for you?
Yep.
Anybody else on this? Let's go to building inspection, 261. The only thing I had for your building inspection, 261, was the fact that you have under 20171 vehicle maintenance, it seems a bit low, $300.
Yeah, that would be fees that we would pay to an outside vendor if we were to go to
It's just
someone else.
vehicle maintenance is what it says.
Yeah. As opposed to, we also have another line item. It's a roads interfund line item. So if we need a repair, we can also have our shop at Roads do the work for us.
Good.
We also have 2 fairly new vehicles. So at this point, it's mostly, changing oil. I know, exactly. Nothing major. I mean, in past years, we've had to get new tires and those types of things. But those are things that we also talk about in our budget meetings,
Right.
whether or not we're at that spot. It does seem low, though.
Well, yeah, just looking at your previous years, 1,000, 1,400, 2,000,
Yeah, we
and then
had
300 for this year.
Yeah, last year I believe we had. Last year, the year before, we had a vehicle removed or replaced that had a lot of issues.
If you're comfortable with that number, I'm comfortable with that
I'm
number.
comfortable with it. We'll live with it. We'll
Yeah.
see how it goes. Fingers crossed.
You talk on line 20234 about data processing software. Is that a new software?
That was software that was purchased with a REAP planning grant, and yes, it is newer and it allows us to receive and issue building permits online. We're still working our way through that. The setup and the first year of the fees were all paid with grant funds. What you see in this year's budget is going to be the first year of, us having to use non-grant funds for it. And the annual renewal is in March. So it's March to March.
And then I kind of asked the additional manpower to implement that because you have this in the intrafund 3,000 from IT.
Yeah.
Is that to implement this particular new software, or is that for something different?
This is to scan building permits. As part of that same REAP planning grant, we had all of our building permits scanned, and we want to keep up with that. So this is what the 3,000 is to have IT staff. Also, there was $10,000 in the planning division budget that is also for us to begin scanning all of our planning files, which is going to be
Where are they?
really
They
huge.
don't tell me the location, but they're stored now in like boxes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, metal file cabinets.
Oh, okay. And then what is a strong motion fee?
Okay. The California Strong Motion Instrumentation Seismic Hazard Mapping Fee is a fee that cities and counties assess for all building permits. The fee is based on a percentage of the proposed building's construction value or valuation. The fee varies by category and is a minimum of 50 cents. Our department collects this fee and quarterly sends 95% of the fees to the Department of Conservation, who uses the funds for seismic mapping. The reason why it may be greater than this year than last year is because we had at least one or two particular permits that had a high valuation, and so we received the money as a revenue, but the amount that we had to pass it through to the state we didn't have enough in it, so I had to come to the board mid-year and have the revenues increased and those line items in order to send the pass-through money back to the state. And so this is kind of a preemptive move to make sure we have enough money. If we don't get the money as revenue, we're not sending it to the state, so it's not going to be a general fund liability. But that's, in a nutshell, what it's about.
So I have under revenue that, construction permits, that's a real steady revenue source. And you've recommended on the revenue 329,000, although this year to date is 374. I guess I was just hoping that you could kind of walk me through, or us through are we anticipating big developments? What kind of things could we do to help increase that revenue, I guess? I asked two different questions.
Yeah, I can say each year when we have our pre-budget meeting or budget meeting, internally, we discuss, do you know of anything that's coming through? If we know of a large project that's coming through, we would certainly include that. If not, what we do is we rely upon our actuals, and then also just internally, like what, our conversations that our inspectors are having with contractors, conversations we're having at the counter with the public, kind of getting a feel. Do we think there's going to be anything coming in? Does it seem like, is this a recession? Those types of things. We've had those. And that's kind of, it's like a crystal ball. I mean, we
Right.
come up with the number, and then whenever we have the second budget meeting, prior to the adoption of the final, at that point, we usually have our actuals. And at that point, we reevaluate it. Should it be higher? If so, let's increase it. And that's more often than not, that's what we do.
Do you typically, for revenues, budget lower than what you anticipate, just in case?
Not intentionally.
Yeah.
Not intentionally. I can see the point of doing that, but no, not in this
Right.
case. I think we really do try to have it be as close to what we think we may get. But again, it's a crystal ball. It's how many people come in, how the value of the project. It varies.
I think there are ways. Nothing would make me more happy to see those revenue line items projected quite a bit further, but that takes investment from the county. More importantly, it takes investment of economic development dollars to really start identifying parcels out there and then seeking development for those parcels. So there's a lot of legwork that will need to go into those type of opportunities that will help lay out a red carpet per se when we have a fish on the line.
Do you think that comes from, just for my own clarification, do you think that comes from this building inspection or from Heidi's division in and of itself, or do you think that is through an economic development position?
Heidi's current department budget doesn't allow for the capacity to do the extra legwork. It would have to come from a different source.
What I would say is wherever this position or wherever it ends up being, that, you know, whenever they have ideas for projects, they would come to us and we would go through, maybe look at, you know, what lands are available and trying to help them
Yeah.
build projects.
And that's an approach that's one step at a time. And what I would advocate for, as long as we're trying to tiptoe ourselves in the economic development world, is to get ahead of that. And that's what a lot of communities do that are on the cutting edge economic development. They're laying out the groundwork, so when a developer comes to the area and they actually have a fish on the line, they have all that stuff worked out prior to that developer getting it. And so instead of that developer approaching us, what's available out there, we already know what that is.
But like, so you've answered it, but so my question, or what you're saying is that that would be through CDD in general to have those identified, or no, that's not what you're saying?
CDD would need to work in cooperation with whoever we
Okay.
have brought on to fill that capacity.
I think we have a lot of the data, the land use data that they would need,
Okay.
but we don't in-house have the expertise to know how you make all that happen. We're not developers.
Okay.
We're on the other side.
That's interesting, thank you. How many building inspections were requested by the public last fiscal year?
1,590.
Whoa, and that's with 2 building inspectors?
Yep.
Holy camole, okay. And then the average time frame from request to completion, because I would imagine that contractors really need to keep things moving along. So what is that kind of average time?
No, are you talking about the average time for an inspection?
No, like for when they say, okay, come inspect my foundation.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Generally, if you call in the morning, you may get an afternoon
Wow.
inspection. We can't make any promises because we don't know where people are. I mean, you could have an inspection in Klamath or Big Flat or Low Divide Road. So we have to kind of logistically figure out where we are. But, if it's, say, an electrical for like a green tag and it's on Friday and the power company can be at someone's house at 4:00, we're going to be there because that's when we need to be there. But typically, we're very, I think, we try our best to work with people's
Oh, okay, so they
schedules.
don't put on like a formal thing. It's not like this process where they submit something and then you review it and then,
Well, I think, are you just talking, this would be if someone wanted, like, hey, I need a roof nail inspection this
Right.
afternoon. We're going to go and look at our board. We're going to see where our inspectors are and we're going to put their name down and someone's going to show up between
Nice.
1 and 3 or 1 and 4 or whatever. So if that's what you mean. I
yep,
don't-
no, that's exactly
okay.
what I
I
mean,
can
yeah.
vouch for that. They're extremely responsive. Typically, they'll say, hey, give me 24 hours, but if it's raining this afternoon and I pulled a permit this morning, they'll come before this afternoon.
That's awesome.
I mean, they are on it.
Yeah,
They're always willing to help.
Yeah,
And
that's one thing that we have
1,590.
to compliment on, is the building department is really Johnny on the spot when it comes to going out there and doing the certifications as part of that process. Even when you were short-staffed, they really didn't take more than 24 hours to get out there. I never saw them go past 2 days to get the sign-off done, so
Oh, never.
big compliments.
Good to hear. Thank you. We'll accept those.
and then any specific goals that you have for building inspection this next year? Any new software that you need? I mean, aside from what you've,
I think our main thing is to keep the staffing level that we have. And then, we do want to increase the use of our online permitting program if we can. We're also looking at doing plan checks on our computers. Our primary plan reviewer got a nice monitor for him, and so that'll be something that's going to be coming up. And then bringing those ADU plans online, maybe encouraging more people to develop ADUs.
Have we looked at any kind of tax credits or anything like that that it would help encourage people to want to build ADUs? Is that something that your department would look into, or why are you guys laughing?
Oh, driving through my district. There's no encouragement needed.
Oh, is there a lot of ADUs going up?
I don't think there's any permits, but I.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm unsure about that. I know I have seen where, some, things about incentives, but it's more through a state program. It's not something that would be, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have not looked into it.
All right. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for this budget line?
Sorry, I just had one, the part-time temporary line. I know it's not a big budget item, and I see that we had it there last year for $12,000, but I just wondered what you're using that.
We have a
10,000.
retired annuitant who was formerly the account clerk for the building inspection division, and she is available to help us when we need extra help,
Good
and
deal.
that's why we have those funds allocated. So we're only going to use what we need, and it'll probably be less than what's listed. But
Okay.
it's nice to have that safety net, because if you have someone on vacation, what have you, she's available to come in and bail us out.
Well, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to 410, environmental health.
So I guess if I could, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Can you just give a brief overview of the job functions of environmental health? Because I think it feels like there is like several different, I'm sorry, Supervisor Howard, did you have something?
I said I can.
Oh, I love that. But so environmental health, they do a variety of things. They're not just inspecting restaurants. They're doing what else?
Okay, they inspect restaurants, bars, retail food establishments, public drinking water supply systems, swimming pools, tattoo parlors. They assist in the investigations of sewage disposal systems and land use projects. They permit and inspect well installations. They provide oversight to solid waste functions, including inspections of the transfer stations and closed landfills. They act as the certified unified program agency for the county, which includes permitting and monitoring for all facilities that have hazardous materials. They conduct installation and abandonment inspections for underground storage tanks. They do the tobacco retail license. That's a newer one that they do. They do shellfish. If there's toxins, they do, bed bugs in hotels, bat bites, rabies, they do it all.
Is it all complaint driven, or are there certain things that they have to go and like once a year, who are they reporting to?
Okay, well, for example, with food facilities, as part of an annual permit, there's generally a one-year inspection, an annual inspection. If there are complaints, we're going to be out there more frequently until those are resolved. As the CUPA for our hazardous materials, it depends on what type of hazardous materials you have. You may have inspections every 3 years. You may have them more frequently if you have underground storage tanks, et cetera. See here, we do, I believe, quarterly inspections on our solid waste. Did I answer it? What was it?
Yeah, no,
feel like I didn't get it all.
if it was complaint driven or not.
Oh, yeah, and then complaints are always something that we respond to as quickly as possible. That also brings up another one. Spill reports, when hazardous materials like boats losing fuel on roads, we get called out on all of those as well. And we, I know the other part you said is who do we report to? For example, the CUPA, all of our reporting at the end of the day is reported to Cal EPA.
Okay.
For the transfer station and all of anything related to solid waste, it's reported to Cal Recycle. Both entities evaluate us every 3 years, review all of our records.
And with, I believe, SB 1383, that we've perhaps seen a little bit of pullback from that and the requirements. Is that true?
Yeah, I believe that with the rural exemption, but we are still working, I believe, and I could be wrong, on the tier 1 and tier 2 food producers, so the grocery stores and the larger school district, I believe, we're supposed to be monitoring to make sure that any organic waste is being funneled to the proper location. There's a
Yeah.
board ordinance that
One
we're
of the,
supposed to follow.
yeah, I wanted to just check in. You mentioned the tobacco ordinance that we put into place. How much has that increased the workload for your staff on that?
Not really much at all. It can be done in tandem with other inspections. There might be one or two unique businesses that we may not have had under our program before, but for the most part, they're places we're going to be going for. They may have a grocery permit, say like a fuel mart or something like that. We already have a permit, so it's just the same time.
Okay, all right.
At this point, we haven't considered adding a fee for that.
I just wanted to make sure, because, I mean, that was a big concern we had, was the amount of work that we were going to then be requiring of environmental health. So I just wanted to double check on that. Is there any shifts in funding priorities with environmental health that we need to be made aware of?
As far as I know, no, not at this point. Our major funding outside of revenues and some money that we receive from Cal Recycle would be the realignment funds that are transferred to us quarterly from Department of Health and Human Services. We have tried to work with them to get the net cost of the Environmental Health Division to be $0. And I don't know, it looks like right now we're sitting with I think according to the figure that you provided, we have a net cost now. So when everything shakes down, I'll need to be speaking with the director for the Department of Health and Human Services to find out whether or not there are additional funds to help offset this to get us down to a zero net cost.
Yeah, you guys are very close.
And we only transfer what we need. For example, the fourth quarter of 23-24, we looked at our budget and we realized we didn't need the full amount of the quarterly payment. So we never asked for more than what we can use. So this would be if we spent every cent we have or allocated in the budget, which we rarely do.
And you listed off a lot of duties that they do, and this is something that is able to be done with the 2 full-time employees.
Yes, I asked them about that, and they felt that they're adequately staffed.
Okay,
And if we get the administrative assistant position filled, if they have any more higher level administrative things that they need, we can have that person assist them.
okay, perfect. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Heidi, I just had the one question about your part-time temporary help there. Or I'm sorry, not part-time temporary, professional services. I see 21-22, that line was $825. And the next year it went up to $2,000, but last year and this year it's up around $12,000 and $14,000. What are we using those for?
This funding relates to the pesticide storage area, so the Superfund site on Washington Boulevard. For many, many years, once the property was cleaned by the US EPA, Department of Toxic Substances Control, we monitored it. Finally, we received positive results that the monitoring, that it has successfully met the threshold that allows us to discontinue monitoring it. But the next step in doing that is having a well destruction work plan approved by the Department of Toxic Substances Control. We had a plan prepared. It was submitted to DTSC in February of last year. I believe it was February. It has not been approved to date, not because there's anything wrong with it, just because that's their priority. But once that plan is approved, we're going to use those funds to destroy the monitoring wells. And then once the monitoring wells are clean, then we can look toward removing the land use covenant that kind of plagues that property.
Hey, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's go to 416, public nuisance, my favorite.
So you currently have 2 full-time employees there. I came to a Measure R meeting not too long ago, and they had indicated that they were going to be asking for a 3rd code enforcement officer, but I don't notice that included in the payroll here. Something's shifted.
No, it hasn't been included in the payroll because it hasn't been brought to the board.
Okay,
CAO Lopez can explain what the process is. We submitted a report recently for that, and it's my understanding it's going to be included in the final budget.
Yes, that's correct. It's already gone through the Measure R committee, like you stated, Supervisor Starkey, and it's been to the board as well, and it was approved at both of those levels. And so Heidi has recently submitted a request, so it'll be part of that adopted budget.
okay. And then what would, I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but what would be the purpose of that third code enforcement officer, if you want to just briefly tell us about that now?
Sure. The position would be assigned to help abate encampment areas. As we're getting closer to the point in which our emergency shelter and micro village are going to be in use, the next step is to abate those areas and then to keep them clean. And by having this one position dedicated to everything related to homelessness, not necessarily just at the locations that we've identified through this project, but elsewhere, it frees up the other two code enforcement officers to work on receiverships, abatement warrants, grants, and administrative citations that are going to help improve our neighborhoods and our tourist corridors. This position, though, $40,000 of the third position would be paid for by the Department of Health and Human Services. We have a commitment from Director Brown on that. And then the remaining funds would be with the Measure R. We estimated that the additional position would be around $87,000.
Great. I look forward to seeing that.
Can we stick on that subject just for a second,
Yeah, sure.
Supervisor? Since I'm just hearing about this for the first time, and I know we're gonna hear about it later, it sounds like, but, the sustainability piece out of DHSS budget, is it 1 year, 2 years, how,
At this point, we just have 1 year.
just 1 year? So this could be a position that could potentially erode in a future budget,
It could
potentially
erode.
erode, go away.
It could potentially. Yes.
Okay.
There is some succession planning, though.
Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't know. Thank you
guess
for bringing it up. There is some succession planning that
The
might
board's
make
often
that.
criticized about salary development out of Measure R fund, so I know we need to be cognizant of it as a board when we're allocating the revenues from that fund to salary. But more importantly, if the dollars would be allocated towards some cleanups, something visual and impactful on the ground, I could see that being more acceptable for the use of those dollars, than actually having a permanent salary on staff. Just, I don't, it's
Yeah,
the
it's-
nuances in developing a budget, which are difficult, but you having very tenured aspect of doing this annually, we rely on you to develop that budget, but these are just concerns that I would express before this actually comes to the full board meeting
Yeah.
and vetted with the public.
I think and it's something that can be raised because it was brought up at the Measure R meeting, which is a public meeting, is that there is sort of a succession planning in place. So there may be, by having this structure, we may not end up having to lay anyone off because someone may
Might retire.
retire.
Understood.
So code enforcement, and I don't know about the gentleman, but for code enforcement, that's the most that I feel like I'm involved with the community a lot of the time. So how many active cases are there currently, or on average in this past fiscal year?
Okay, according to Dominic, on average, in fiscal year 23-24, we had 335 cases opened. During that last fiscal year, 79 cases from the past fiscal year remain open. Oh, and they have a total of 152 open cases. And then the 79 cases that remain open are ongoing or need attention to resolve. Which-
Okay. And of those, how often are cases being taken to hearing? I know I sat in on a hearing. I felt the process was just invaluable, but how often are these cases actually going to that degree, or are they being resolved before they get to a hearing?
According to Dominic, last fiscal year, we took 13 properties to the public nuisance hearing, or to a hearing. I don't know how many individual hearings how many were considered at each, but we did have 100% success in our favor. This also didn't include the 8 cases taken to a receivership through the courts, which were also all ruled in the county's favor.
That's a relatively new, the receiverships, is that a relatively newer process that we've been doing?
Yes,
And
absolutely. And
Has
it's-
that been found to be successful?
Absolutely. It's a huge partnership that we have with County Counsel's office. They've been amazing in helping with it, and can't say enough good things about it.
That was my other question, is that how often are you guys interacting with other departments? Because I know code enforcement even sometimes interacts with the recorder's office when they're having to share data and stuff. So is that something?
Definitely. Yeah, they're all over the place. Sheriff's office, providing assistance both directions. We have child protective services, adult protective services, where we provide assistance with substandard housing. The county conservator's office with nuisance properties, where they have clients. Animal control, and then they also assist us on nuisance issues. The Parks Department, we assist with the enforcement in campground rules if they need it, or on other county-owned property. They've also helped us with cleanups whenever they've had staff. Lately, we've relied more on our on-call contractors' help with abatements. And then clearly within the department, they help with all of the different codes within the community development and enforcing those if it gets to that point.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your work, Heidi. We really do appreciate you and
You're
all
welcome. Thank you.
your leadership that you provide.
Any other questions by the board?
Yeah, just talking about that receivership situation, I had that question, line 91121, the lien repayment. Is that what that is about? Is we get that 60 grand? Is that a successful?
I'm glad, thank you for bringing that up. That was actually, I had submitted paperwork to the auditor's office, and I'd actually placed it in the wrong line item, and I worked with Auditor Shad last week. That funding for the 60,000 is actually supposed to go into 91076, which is the interfund lien repayment trust. What we wanted to do is take $60,000 from the lien repayment trust, which we call our revolving fund. We want to take 60,000 from it and place it into the 101-416 budget so we can use that for professional services to do cleanup. Typically what the 60,000, the place where it was before would be if we were anticipating getting money, but we don't place it into this budget. We would place it into that, the lien repayment trust, any type of recovery that we receive from abatements,
Okay.
Tax sales, so on, that goes into that fund, and then it's our bank account, and then we transfer it over with the board's approval. So that has been corrected. It'll be presented to you with the final budget in September.
Thank you.
Good deal.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Heidi.
We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Any public comment?
Oh,
Please come forward. Please come forward up to the microphone.
I just had one, Heidi, and that was,
Can you tell
sorry?
us who you are first? Public meeting.
I'm PJ. And I have a question about why engineering was moved to roads, and I couldn't hear everything you said. Was that a state mandated move?
no, it was not. It was a reorganization that was recommended at the staff level for simplicity, because the majority of the duties that are performed by the engineering division staff relate to county roads, or it should. And when it doesn't, we have to make the road fund whole, which is finding these other sources like our general fund. There's no case that the road fund can't be made whole. They can only bill time to road fund related uses.
Okay, thank you. That was the only question.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a short break, 5 minutes, and then we'll